Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm John Reider, Ascended Dead.
And John, how would you describe the music of Ascended Dead?
Uh, it's dark, chaotic death metal. Influenced very heavily by like first gen death metal, like Old Possessed or Necrovore kind of stuff. But just a lot more blast beats.
And so when we say a lot more blast beats, would you say Ascended Dead is mostly fast and pretty chaotic?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Would you mind telling me a little bit about how Ascended Dead got together and what your intentions were at the time?
Yeah, sure. So we formed in 2011. Basically my old band, mine and Ian's old band had broken up, and Charlie's old band had broken up too. So I found him just on like Facebook or something like that, hit him up to jam, and then we started jamming, and then we started the band. And we just we had done whatever stupid little local bands at the time. So we pretty much decided at that time we wanted to make it, make Ascended Dead be this thing that was, this, you know, our ideal band kind of thing, which, was cool to have those early experience with those previous bands, just to kind of like, you know, have better, we learned a lot from like the mistakes of our previous bands, when we started this one. And yeah, I mean, at the time we were just really heavily influenced by like early Possessed, and that was kind of like, that was and still kind of is like my ideal band as far as like the sound, the songs, the image, everything about it's really good. The riffs, the drums, the vocals, it's well mixed. They have this gnarly image, it's just like, that's kind of like pretty much what we wanted to do. And that's what we've been trying to do for the past 11 years or 12 years or however long it's been. So, yeah.
And so it started with you and Charlie, the drummer.
No, it was me, Ian.
Sorry, you and Ian, the guitarist.
Yeah. Yeah, basically the two guitar players, and yeah, we met up with Charlie, and that's kind of how that was kind of the core of the band at the time, and still pretty much is. Um, you know, I think Ian took like 1 year off, 2018, and came back. But other than that, it's been the three of us pretty much since day one.
And going back to those early recordings, it sounds like you always had this idea, this early Death Black sound in mind for Ascended Dead. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not even hard. I mean, it's hard to say black. Like black metal to me has always kind of been a strange like term, because it's like, there's a lot of elitism associated with it, and everyone has this idea of exactly what black metal kind of is, whereas death metal is a very broad kind of thing. It can be so many different things. And a lot of the bands that I'm influenced by as far as death metal goes is kind of like it's a lot of like the first gen death metal, like like I said, Possessed, Necrovore, the first Sepultura release, Bestial Devastation, just like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, where it's just this little kind of gray area between, is it death metal, is it thrash, is it black metal, is it, it has, elements of traditional heavy metal, it's kind of all those things. And that's kind of what I've always been drawn to, is that type of stuff, so I mean, I guess death metal, but darker, because I mean, I guess seemed like there was a time where death metal and black metal were pretty much the same thing, and then they kind of split off into their own. But I still have hard, affinity to that first gen, which is like a huge musical influence for me.
Sure. Um, yeah, like I'm not that hung up on like what black metal means. It's not really an area that I remember when black metal meant either like Merciful Fate or Emperor. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, totally.
and then for bands like Samael who had a like their own sound or Rotting Christ or whatever, uh, you know,
Right.
I'm not really that hung up on what makes a band black metal. I mean, you go back to old zines, like even something like Slayer occasionally gets referred to as black metal, um,
Right.
just because of like the lyrical content and the imagery and stuff like that. But in terms of the sound, I mean, uh, it sounds like you love speed. It sounds like you love black blast beats. It sounds like you love tremolo picking.
Yeah. Fast,
Yeah.
heavy, chaotic, aggressive, just like and I hate to keep bringing up other bands, but like Venom. That to me, that's like the epitome of everything that metal should be. Just volume, aggression, and punch. Just fast, chaotic ignorance.
Yeah. So,
So I
sorry,
guess
did you want to say something?
that's what we try to do.
Right
Nah.
on. So, how does an Ascended Dead song start? And who does it usually start with?
Like writing wise, or like the actual song
Yeah,
itself.
writing wise. I mean, like, do you and Ian trade riffs? Do you come in with mostly arranged songs? And do you guys work together as a band? Or do you guys like
Um,
jam stuff out?
yeah, it's kind of a mixture of all those things. I mean, like, and I don't want to frame it like, oh yeah, I write everything kind of thing, because like that's how like my old band from a long time ago was, where it was like I wrote everything, and just the members, it was like you play what I tell you to play kind of thing. Whereas Ascended Dead, it's more like basically it's like I come up with a very, very general idea, or like a section, or like a sequence of riffs, and then together we all kind of jam it out and bounce ideas off of each other, and just keep hammering it until it's a song.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're mostly working on the riffs and the arrangements.
um I guess you could say it's kind of all of us. I mean, it's just like, I mean, like Ian has his own, like, music that he writes for, and you know it's just kind of like, the very general idea comes from me, and then all that other stuff, is all of us together, adding their little flair to it,
And
and
do things
really
usually,
making it what it is.
gotcha. And do songs usually start with a riff for you?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
always been a very riff driven kind of entity, at least for me.
And what state are the songs in when you bring them to or I guess I should say ideas when you bring them to the rest of the band? Do you usually have like an idea of flow, how you want a song to progress, or is it really what the four of you come up with together? Is that how a song takes shape?
It's hard to say. I feel like a lot of it has to do with the nature of like the song. Like, for example, on like our new album, we have a song called we have like two songs. Like there's Visceral Strike and Ungodly Death, for example. They're very like they're pretty short songs, and we tried a bunch of different stuff on it. And Subconscious Barbarity on the first album is kind of like this too, where it's just like we try so many different things that it turns out the shortest, simplest way is kind of like what ends up being how it is. Or sometimes, then you get other songs like, you know like The Curse, for example, or Inverted Ascension, where it's just like, it ends up being longer just because that's just the nature of, the ideas and the riffs on it. So I guess it's not really like, it just depends on the idea itself, I guess.
Sure. So on May 12th, 20 Buck Spin will release the second Ascended Dead album, which is called Evenfall of the Apocalypse. Tell me a little bit about the album. When did you start working on it? How did you approach writing the album? Stuff like that.
Well, it took us a while to write it and complete it, and it's like a lot of it really just has to do with like how the first album was. Like I feel like we got a lot of like we weren't like too happy with how like the guitars came out on it, like as far as like how they sonically sound and like everything about it was really like one dimensional kind of. So like I guess for this record we kind of tried to like grow a little bit more, like not, I mean not grow, but like just in a way we kind of like returned back to like how it was with like the first demo and EP, where it's just like a lot more like variety and a lot more like musical kind of stuff, whereas the first record was like just play as fast as heavy as possible kind of thing. And
Yeah,
a lot of it was a lot of it was just kind of returning back to like what the stuff that I was listening to like back went way, way, way back when I was first playing guitar, like, just falling back in love with like Possessed and Metallica and, even Black Sabbath and Judas Priest type stuff. I feel like we kind of lost that plot around the time of the first record. So, I mean, as far as like all the stuff that was written for it, like, I mean, it took 6 years for it to come out. So, I mean, it's like, it's kind of hard to it's kind of hard it's going to be like hard, like pretty much impossible for me to like discuss every single little part of like all the writing that went into all 6 years, all 11 songs or whatever. But it's like a lot of shit happens in life over 6 years, and I feel like it's kind of a collection of all of those things. you know and
sure.
I think the first album it was what we recorded in 2016. So we had been a band for 5 years by that time. So it was kind of a similar type thing, and like, I know that's a pretty common process for bands to like take forever to write their first album. And then their first album, it's like, then they get pressured to do a second album like next year. And then that's why it ends up not being as good. But I mean, for us, it was kind of just like, you know, we want every album to like be like as good if not better than that first one. Otherwise rather not even do it. So that's why it took so long to do it. But we're very happy with how it came out overall.
Sure. So the 6 years wasn't just because of all the usual, the the stuff that all of us were going through for the past 3 years,
um
or
no,
did that
I wouldn't
also
say
play a part in
so.
it?
I've if anything it helped, just because it helped, like, I mean, other members end up having to like do tours or do their other bands or whatever. And, you know, for me, it's like I was living with Charlie at the time. So, it was, in a way, it was kind of a blessing just to, not have any distractions for a little bit and just write and fuck around and just, you know, just jam like for the hell of it, like we did in the early days, without like outside distractions and stuff. And a lot of that a lot of the negativity from that whole situation might have manifested too. I mean, there was other things that happened in our lives throughout that time that, kind of manifested in its own kind of way, just in the music and stuff. So I guess it was kind of a blessing, at least for this part of things.
It sounds like, from what you told me earlier, that you went out of your way to make this a more dynamic album in terms of like tempo changes and things like that.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's like it's not really intentional. Like yeah, we want to do stuff because like it's like I've been to shows where I've seen bands where it's just like they'll just play a riff and it'll be like, yeah, this riff's in seven. Can you tell that it's in seven? And it's like that's like the point of the riff kind of thing, and it's like I don't know.
Sure,
I wouldn't
I don't
say
mean
necessarily.
in terms of like time signatures, but in terms of like, you know, um, changing up the speed, having more slower parts. Like you guys actually did like a an instrumental on this album, which has some acoustic parts on it.
Yeah, yeah, we did that on the first album too, or something like that on the first album too. But it was a lot different on this one. The last one it was just acoustic guitars, whereas this time we had I well okay, album's not out yet, so I don't want to reveal too much. But yeah, I mean
I
with
think the
this
album will be out by the time people hear this interview.
oh okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean the new one it kind of has it's got that whole section with like the electric guitars and the drums and everything come into. So, you know, so where was I? Well, where was I going with that?
Well, just in terms of dynamics, it sounds like you guys wanted to make a more varied album.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of that was also, I mean, just kind of like, we wanted to, if you listen to like the first demo and EP, for example, it's clearly a lot more like riff, driven kind of stuff. And I feel like with the first record, we kind of lost that and it became more based on like, just like super fast tempos all the time kind of thing. And, that's why that whole album was just like, back and forth between like four blasts and three blasts. And, you know, whereas this one, yeah, it was kind of a return to just how it was before, like before that record. So I guess it wasn't really like super like that much of an infusion of anything new. It was, if anything, it was a return from how it was before.
Gotcha. Where did you guys end up recording the album?
We recorded it at was it Toad House Studios in Portland. Um, Charlie engineered it. Our drummer, yeah, he recorded all the instruments. Um, then I recorded the vocals separately on another yeah at another location with someone else, and then we had it mixed and mastered by Steve Diacutis, the same dude that did Disma, Evokin, Worm, the new Funebrarm album, which I'm not sure if that's out yet, but that album, he did a lot of stuff on that, and we chose to have him mix and master just because if you listen to like almost anything he does, he has a really good like analog, warm kind of sound that is very old school sounding, which was kind of also something we were going for too. So um, yeah, also he has a tendency to make things really big sounding too. So that was kind of why we did that.
Gotcha. I'm curious about the recording the vocals separately. You recorded with Jason Gluck from Rude, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
Why? Go for it. Go for it.
oh yeah, because we lived together at the time,
Oh, I see. Okay. So was it just easier to
and he
record
did
the
it for cheap.
vocals?
What's up?
Gotcha. So was it just easier to record the vocals with Jason rather than at Toad House?
Well, I think Charlie had to go on tour around that time, so it we couldn't really record with him, and then everybody else that was around, like would have charged a fuckload, would have
Mhm.
charged a lot of money for it, and budget wise, things were already kind of like almost you know little getting a little pinchy, so luckily we did it with him, or I did it with him, and he was pretty cheap, and he was super chill and easy to work with, and since we lived together, I could really really take my time and really just nail down like a song over the course of like a day kind of thing, it and it really helped with the performance of it, because I think with the first record, see that's another thing too. It's like kind of learning from the mistakes that we made from the first record, where it's like we were low on time, so then I tried to do the whole thing like in a day, and then I wasn't particularly happy with like how they came out. Whereas with this one, it was like I was able to really like take my time and drill it in every single little part the way that I want to happen.
Gotcha. Did you want to do anything different with your vocal performance this time around?
Not really, just really just mostly just wanted to optimize the performance of it. I think with the first record, I layered like the entire album. Like there's like a high vocal and a low vocal throughout the entire thing. Whereas with this one, it there's pretty much only one layer of vocals throughout the entire thing. I think there might be a double, a layer here, a layer there kind of thing, but for the most part, it's just one vocal throughout the whole thing, and which is kind of like I was saying, it's kind of a return to how it was on the demo or the EP from way back in the day, which like it kind of like when it's just double the whole time, it's kind of like it's kind of overkill and it just sounds like super noisy and stuff. Whereas like if you do that in strategic bits, then it has more effect when you use it. So yeah, pretty much other than that, it was just like really taking my time and making sure that the performance was exactly what I wanted it to be. And yeah, that was really easy to obtain with that way that we did it. And it's also the songs are also quite a bit different too. Like like I was saying, all the different peaks and valleys that this record has compared to that one. It's like different like types of riffing and sections is going to require different like types of vocals over it. So I think it all, yeah, also just the way that the songs are kind of lends itself to it.
Gotcha. You spoke a little bit about some of the things that are going on in your lives and in the band members' lives in the background. Uh, do you want to say anything about the lyrics of the album or some of the themes of the album?
Ooh, that's
It's up to
tough
you.
because
Like,
it's like I'm not sure if I want to like reveal too much as far as like the whole like narrative structure of the record. But I
well,
mean, so,
first of all, like when you say narrative structure, is there an overarching theme? Is there a concept that ties all the songs together?
somewhat. I mean, it's hard to God, it's gonna be hard for me to describe it just because it's like, you know, I also don't want to make things too specific because a lot of it is just kind of like, it's a sound. It's supposed to like, the emotions and everything throughout the whole record is kind of, that kind of is its own thing. And, it has a whole like, rebirth, life and death kind of kind of structure, I guess. And, yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
That's hard to
that's
describe.
fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
You spoke about your drummer Charlie recording this album and working on this album as an engineer. Is this the first Ascended Dead album that Charlie engineered?
Um, it is the first full album that he has engineered. He
Okay.
engineered our EP from back in the day, the Arcane Malevolence EP. He engineered the split recordings that we did after the first album, the one with Atomicide and the one with Evil Priest.
Okay.
Um, so it was, I think, yeah, he didn't do the first demo and he did not do the first album. Um, but I feel like those records would have come out, those recordings would have come out better if he did do it. So, you know, yeah, ideally we would just do it with him every time and, have enough time to, for him to also, get a good focus on like the drums and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. Cause I think that was like kind of one of the main, apprehensions on his part was to, how hard it is to focus on both recording and on performing the drums on it kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, performance wise, do you want to say anything about what it was like working with Charlie, recording with Charlie?
Oh, it's great. It's smooth. It's, doesn't, he understands like he understands what the musicians want, and, um, recorded with him in other bands too, and I've been working with him for years. So a lot of ways I probably take it for granted, but yeah, it's awesome. It's as good as it can be from a musician's perspective, just because it's you know you don't feel you don't feel pressure in any kind of way, and as such, it's easier for like the ideas and stuff to like come out.
Yeah. And you mentioned Stephen D. Cutis mixed and mastered the album. Stephen's based in New Jersey and worked with a lot of bands on the East Coast. Uh, he he recorded Dim Mak back in the day. That's a name I haven't seen or heard in like, I don't know, 20 years
Which band?
almost. Dim Mak. Do you know that band?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, dude, check them out.
No.
It's ex members of Ripping Corpse. I think you'll dig it. It's got a lot of like very
Sick.
chaotic death metal kind of stuff. Kung Fu themed death metal.
Nice.
um, Kung Fu themed death metal from members of Ripping Corpse. Um, but and you mentioned that Steven brought a warmer sound to the album. Was there anything in Steven's back catalog or any band that he's worked with that made you want to work with him?
Um, yeah, there was two big ones. One of them was that first Disma album towards the Megalith. That one was just like, so just huge and massive sounding. And, you know, the other one was this Funebrarm album, which I've heard it, but I'm not sure if it's out yet. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that right now. But yeah, I mean, he just like he's even though the guy is not like a metal dude, he understands like what we're going for, which is just like particularly on that Disma record where it's just like it sounds fucking just massive, but like you can still hear every little thing that's going on. And that's kind of always been like a struggle with us as far like particularly like again I keep bringing up the first record, but it's like with that one it was also just hard to you know a lot of the like stuff just got lost in that production. And we didn't want that to happen again with any of our future stuff. We wanted all to be able to hear all that stuff but still retain the heaviness and the darkness.
Gotcha. Yeah. So by the time people hear this podcast, the album will actually be out. And I believe you guys will be going on a West Coast tour. Do you want to say anything about that
Right.
tour?
um let's see. I've been doing a lot of the planning for that. Just it was kind of a sudden thing. Like I think right around January or February when the album was finished. The label was like, "Oh, by the way, do a tour." I was like, "Okay, all right." Like we didn't have like really any support for it at all, so I just started hitting at all the people I know, and now we're gonna do it. So Arizona, San Diego, LA, Sacramento, Oakland, Eugene, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, BC. If you're near, go to it or not, whatever.
Tell me about the band that you're touring with. Is it Korskrad?
Korskrad, yeah, I don't know how to say it.
Korskrad.
It's like some old Irish name. It's like old Irish language. But yeah, they're sick. Their album sounds awesome.
And were these dudes that you knew before, or is it something that the label put together?
They had contacted us because I think we were supposed to do that supposed to do this Total Death Over Mexico together. So we had talked about doing a West Coast thing like around that time, but then the Total Death Over Mexico got canceled. So we kind of just talked about doing a tour, like you know, we decided to postpone the West Coast thing or touring together until the time was right. And then when we got the word from Dave at $20 to do the tour, then I hit them up and they were like, okay. And then you know yeah, that's how that worked out.
Right on. So by the time people hear this podcast, Evenfall of the Apocalypse will be out through $20 spin. John, how can people order the album?
You can order it from $20 Spin's website or $20 Spin's Bandcamp. It'll probably be out on some other platforms, but those two I believe are the main ones.
Cool. And do you want to say anything about the physical releases and the vinyl that $20 spin is putting out?
Sure. It's going to be a gatefold. The inside of it is going to have like a big old, you know, going to have a huge piece of artwork on the inside of it, which ties into some of the themes on the record. Um, we were channeling a little bit of the second Possessed record as far as like this, huge kind of presentation. Well, I mean, it's not going to be as gnarly as Beyond the Gates, but it's kind of our little take on that. And the front cover too is also kind of channeling that same sort of thing where it's like you look at it and it becomes like you know, it becomes you when you glance at it at first, it appears to be one thing, but then you look closely and then you start to see all the little details and all the other little things that it kind of is. Um, but the CD version has all of that too, and the tape version has all of that too. Um, so whatever version you prefer. Personally, I'm you know I haven't heard the album since we submitted it to press, so I'm going to be the most excited to hear it on record and see the whole big presentation and stuff like that. And it's the first album I've ever done that I actually enjoy listening to. So, um, yeah.
That's great. It sounds like the the experience of opening up the vinyl and all the things that go with it is important to you. You want people to experience the album that way.
Um, Ideally, I would say yes, just because it was written with all of those things in mind. Like we wrote side A, like all five of those songs to be like how it is on side A, and then side B was kind of all those songs were kind of written as its own separate part, and we've kind of always done it like that. Going all the way back to pretty much all of our main releases that have different sides and stuff like that. So I mean that again, that's how I prefer it. I know everybody has their own means of what they'll take away from it. And of course, once it's out, it's not really my album or our album anymore. Now it's everybody's album. So they'll kind of all, everyone will kind of have their own way of enjoying it and what, different things that they'll take away from it. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Great. And if people want to follow Ascended Dead online, what's the best way to get tour dates and things like that?
We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we have a Bandcamp, and we have a website, ascendeddead.com.
Very cool. John, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's it. Die hard.
Very cool. Thank you, John.
Thank you.